You're listening to NFT 365, the first daily podcast on NFTs with your host, Fanzo.
What's up, friends? Welcome back to another episode of NFT 365. And, I know you've heard me talk a lot about, the rate of change, the pace that we're, currently at, even just like kind of like if we're looking at like the greater landscape, like, we're living in kind of pretty amazing times as far as, what's possible. But I think it's also, interesting when people say things like, we're still early, and those people, like myself, have been in it for a year, and then there's others that have even been in it for like 3 years. But I actually think like wrapping our head around this is essential. I mean, and who's better at kind of allowing us to do that than the man himself, Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah, and I think the next few years, I think people are going to get caught off guard. I was with a friend the other day, and he was talking about building his business and how he used Twitter because it was super early. It was just getting started. And I asked him what year, and he said 2011. And I said, I invested in Twitter in 2007, right? and it hit me because I was like, he's right. Like, he was able to build a food truck and then a QSR business on the back of being early on Twitter in 2011. Yet that's what I'm trying to tell everybody. Like I wish, Sanchin, that the 3,513 people here knew what their actions are doing right this second. They are so early. And by the way, Benji, Dan Schnee, like some of the people on here, like that I see that I've known for a long time, they've been early before, but they're a more mature version of themselves this time, right?
Yeah.
So Brian was early on Web 2, but he was a kid the way I was in Web 1. So Web 2 was his starting point. Now Web 3, Fanzo can do something with. Benji figured out podcasting early, but he was a kid. He's a more mature version now of himself. Dan's been interviewing since he was probably 3 years old, but like he's got a platform now. Dan in 2008, when he was running around, was not the Dan that's right here in the chat now. And and then there's kids who were like me in Web 1, like the guys and gals I just mentioned in Web 2. Like, Amber worked for VaynerMedia when Web 2 was in its, coming up the game. Now she's who she is. Like
amazing.
I just wish, the reason I'm bringing up that Twitter story is in 36 months from this exact second, NFT and Web 3 is early. And a lot of people right now realize they're in this special moment and are being impatient because they think they have to grab all the leverage, the fame, the money, the opportunity, the happiness right now. And I would just like to ask them to take a deep breath and attack with a little Patient Panda, hand in hand with Patient Panda, and do not compromise your value system for this opportunity, even though it feels profound.
I mean, can anyone say it better than Gary Vaynerchuk? And I appreciate the shout out. And that was actually a clip from a Twitter space that Gary did this week with Coinbase NFT. And so shout out to Coinbase NFT. They launched their new NFT marketplace platform, and I'm very thankful they reached out to me, gave me early beta access. So I'm up there on there, and I've actually already sent them kind of a page of feedback, which is kind of cool. But tying into what Gary said, I think is so essential, right? The context he was giving, right? He was, I think it's funny that he might think that I'm more mature. He didn't say I am mature. He said I'm more mature than I was when I kind of jumped into Web 2. And he's correct, right? Like when we first connected in, early 2011, 2012, 2013, for me, it was kind of like finding my footing, finding my voice. But I recognized then that I was early. When people ask me like, Brian, how do I get verified on Twitter? I'm like, I was verified in 2015 on Twitter, right? When people ask me like, Brian, when did you start doing video interviews when live video took off? No, I was on Google Hangouts in 2013, 2011, doing weekly, Google Hangouts with a Twitter chat at the same time. And I think the piece of this that's so important is that it doesn't mean that you have to do everything right now, or that if you don't start like tomorrow and launch a project, then you're going to miss the boat, right? I think that's part of the takeaway here, right? Because if you listen to the end of Gary's clip there, he's like, we have to attack with the Patient Panda, right? Patient Panda is one of his VeeFriends. But there is something really powerful, and I think maybe this is the maturity that he was referring to, and I'm very blessed to be able to have this context now, is part of the whole looking at the landscape is leaning in to what makes sense for you, right? Taking advantage of like this early moving, early mover adopter kind of a space that we're in. But it doesn't mean we have to sell out right away. It doesn't mean that we have to pick all of the right collections. It doesn't mean as a creator, you need a coin today. It doesn't mean that you need to launch an NFT project next month. What it does mean is that you need to take advantage of the fact that you are in early, right? So, and what I mean by taking advantage of is like listening, learning, helping shape the culture, right? Being a voice that lifts people up, not just, a voice that, tries to keep people distant, right? The Web 2 way was, I am a creator and I am elite, and nobody that listens to me is my peer. Nobody that listens to me should be on my level. Well, that's not the case in Web3, right? In Web3, we are decentralizing it. We're not only giving the power back to us as creators, but we're giving the power to all of you as listeners, as consumers, as creators yourself. Because we get to decide now who we consume, how we consume, and even more so, who we are supporting. And I would argue, like, I'm very blessed. Like, although early on, back in 2010, early those days, I might not have been as mature or have figured out like how to kind of make this whole thing work. But I will tell you that one of the things that I did kind of figure out was, when I jumped in the Web 2, I had one YouTube video total. When I jumped in 2013 into this space, one YouTube video, and it was actually a video I created in Iraq when I was there the very first time as a contractor of one of the machine guns going off, and it's scaring me half to death, and my BlackBerry falling down. Yes, with my BlackBerry video was the very first YouTube video that I ever put up. But the reason I say that is if you would have told me at the start of like that Web 2 social media video craze that I was going to be a creator, I was going to do video, I was going to do live video, I was going to have 7 podcasts in that time, I would have said you're crazy. I had no podcast at the beginning. I was not comfortable on video. Live video, I didn't even know what that was. Like, I knew what Justin TV was because we had the hat camera when the Steve Jobs was doing the Apple iPhone announcement. But for me, like, the beauty of this space right now is that you don't have to know everything and you don't have to do everything. And not only is there reward in being patient, but there's also an advantage for being strategic and methodical. And I think this also comes down to one of the mistakes that I made, right? You are who you surround yourself with, who you consume, who you associate with. And you also have to recognize that you have to take the networking and like even your social equity, right? I did a whole episode on social equity, right? Which really just means, if you're giving and building up rapport with people and people are like, man, this person's really helping me out. You're building up that social equity so that when you make an ask, or in the Gary Vee side, right? Jab, 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 right hook. When you make the right hook, you have enough social equity that hook is going to land. I would argue right now, if you're listening to this and you're like, I'm all in on Web3, but I don't really know where to start by building up social equity. Amplify, celebrate, champion, be a fan, and put out people's voices and those creators that you align with, that share your purpose and your common passion. Amplify those, learn with them. Start being a creator or a collector. Start collecting in this space, right? Supporting artists, jumping in the Twitter spaces, and then start leaning into, okay, what is my audience going to look like? And I will tell you, the audience that I was targeting, 15 years ago when I kind of was jumping into this space, or I guess it was 10 years ago, 11 years ago, are completely different than today. But what's beautiful about that is I've been able to refine my message and also understand where my message makes sense. I can tell you, I wrote a book. Most people don't know this, but I wrote a book like 100,000 plus words that never got published because of a Dell technology contract that I had. That's a long story. But I wrote a book called Millennial Mindset. And inside Millennial Mindset was a book all about, and the whole premise was, it's not about the year you were born, rather your ability to embrace digital change, collaboration, and community. You know what's funny about that book that I started writing in 2013? Well, I stopped giving that talk in about 2017. But the interesting thing is, we're going to pull up that, maybe I'll post it up on the website, but you could pull, because I could pull up that whole book, but you could actually look at some of the chapters, right? One of the chapters is, we are greater than me. One of the chapters is about celebrating our wins and screenshotting awesomeness every time something good happens along the way. Another one is about the art of collaboration. Another one, which is near the end of that book, is about how I believe the future of business is community. The crazy thing about it is I believed all those things then, and I even believe them more strong today. The difference for me being, we actually have the vehicle, the control, the value, and the ownership that didn't exist back then for me, didn't exist back then for many of us creators. And so for everyone listening, right now is the best time to start telling your story, to start amplifying others, start figuring out how you're going to connect with your audience, creating that like central hub of your audience, because I can guarantee you a lot of the methodologies, a lot of the thinking, a lot of the thought process, a lot of the best practices that you're establishing right now today for within Web3 are going to be things that you could still implement 5-10 years from now. And the reason that I believe that's true is because you just heard it. Like my example is proof. And to Gary V's point, and a shout out to Benji Travis, who's also a good friend, and Amber and Dan, actually a bunch of good friends that he shouted out in that little clip. The beauty of all of that is that we are all in this together to lift each other up. Like I think Web 2 was a lot about, creators getting to that 1% level and saying like, I'm only going to collaborate with those that have this many followers or this many subscribers. In this world, it's about lifting that rising tide lifts all boats. And I think this is a much more easy, beautiful arena and place for us to grow, to amplify, to celebrate, and really, hopefully to be even continue to mature. I am without question a Toys R Us kid. And you don't know what Toys R Us is, you're probably Gen Z. You can Google it. But I'm a Toys R Us kid, and I don't ever want to grow up. But for me, there is something beautiful about learning from the past, realizing how early we are and how amazing this time is in front of us, but also recognizing that we can be patient. We can be about togetherness and community. And it doesn't have to be the ways of the past. It doesn't have to be stepping on people's throats. It doesn't have to be about being an elitist or on the high mark looking down on others. It really is a magical, exciting time to be a part of communities. You don't have to create your own creator economy, your own creator community. You can actually join communities and take advantage of this early mover, this early excitement that we all have. As always, y'all know that this podcast, I said y'all, it should be Yins. I'm a Pittsburgher. Yins know that this podcast is super powered by the ADHD coin over on Rally. Check out that. Check out the coin. Jump over in our Discord. Come say hello. Let us know what you think about this podcast. What do you think about that clip from Gary and Coinbase NFT? And don't worry, I'll share some of my thoughts and what I've experienced with Coinbase NFT platform very soon. But until tomorrow, my friends, make it a great one. Cheers. All right, guys, my video friends, thanks so much for tuning in. Yeah, that was a clip from the Twitter space with Gary. It was a great Twitter space. Like really I thought it was really dynamic. Gary always drops the hammer. But it was definitely one of, those talks that, hey, there's the Jeep, right? It was definitely when, he was kind of like freestyling. And I think where he was going with that was just to, there was such a powerful room and people were like, Coinbase NFT platform just rolled out in beta. And like, what does beta mean? Like, I mean, beta is early, right? Like, and I think it's important for us to recognize that, but it's also important for us to know that like, these are like, if we feel like we're late right now, people that got in on Twitter in 2011 are like where we are at, right? 3 years from now, people are going to be like, okay, now I'm in early in Web3 and NFTs. I mean, how cool is that? So I'll put some links in the show notes and make sure you subscribe and leave me some comments. What are your thoughts? What's your take? Cheers.